The worst prisons in the world. It's a regular afternoon in the Brazilian detention center Caranjiro. The inmates are playing a game of football and everything seems great. But all that changes in about an hour. A sudden fight breaks out among inmates, and what is just a simple fight grows into a prison riot. The prison director, José Ismael, tries to intervene, but the prisoners outnumber the guards 100 to 1. While the guards try to calm the prisoners down, things get worse. The prisoners are now using knives and pipes to attack themselves and the guards. José Ismael decides to inform the military police about the uprising before things get out of hand. Within minutes, the police arrive at the scene and break into the prison block. What they find will eventually lead to the closure of the prison forever. It will also lead to about 1,000 years in prison sentences being handed down by Brazilian courts. It will become the famous Caranjiro massacre. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the most dangerous prisons in the world and how they operate. We'll be learning why these prisons are so dangerous and the horrors they hold for people unfortunate enough to spend time there. La Santé Prison. We'll be starting with the La Santé Prison. Paris, France is known as the City of Love. Many lovers go there each year for a fantastic celebration of what it means to be in love. What many of these lovers don't know is that the city is also home to one of the most brutal prisons in existence. The La Santé prison is known to be so brutal that many inmates there have chosen to rather take their lives than continue living there. You know a prison is truly despicable when inmates decide that they would rather take their chances with hell. In 1991, over 124 prisoners decided to take their own lives rather than continue living there. Aside from the general squalid conditions that inspire people to suicide, the prison is also home to ridiculous levels of violence. Violence in the prison has gotten so bad that the prisoners only get about 4 hours out of their cell per day. That's just how dangerous the officials think prisoner mixing could be. As expected with these sorts of environments, the prison also has a hierarchical system that makes the entire prison complex a kingdom. Therefore, prisoners aren't just oppressed by guards and the terrible structural conditions of the prison. They are also taken to the cleaners by other prisoners. Everywhere they turn, they face oppression, a truly horrific way to live. Diyarbakir Prison. The Diyarbakir prison in Turkey has always been known as one of the worst places on the planet to serve a prison sentence. One of the reasons why this prison has such a horrible reputation is because it was turned into a martial law military prison between 1980 and 1988. During this period, the prison was said to be in a state of barbarity. That's because 100 people had lost their lives. But that wouldn't be the end of the La Sabanita prison saga. The following year, there was no famous shootout, but over 150 inmates died from violence associated with gangs in the prison. 3 years after this, there was a cholera outbreak at the prison that killed tens of the inmates as well. As recently as 2013, over 50 inmates were killed by other inmates as a result of gang activities within the cells themselves. This preponderance of gang activity meant that very few guards were usually on duty, which led to even more violence. Thankfully, the government has finally taken a look at the prison conditions and has shut down the prison forever. Camp Delta, Cuba. Next on this list is somewhere you might have heard of. Guantanamo Bay has developed a somewhat mystical status in the minds of Westerners around the world, but the actual name of the prison is Camp Delta, and it's in Cuba. Perhaps the most interesting and also horrifying thing about Camp Delta is that it's not a prison. The men in the camp have not been to any courts and have not been sentenced to jail by any judge. This means two things. First off, it means that they are technically inmates that can be released at any time the U.S. government wants. However, it also means that since they aren't American citizens and aren't on American soil, they don't have any of the human rights protections that citizens of America get. In clear terms, this means that they have a shaky legal status and the government can basically do whatever they want to them. To be clear, the U.S. government does have some legal pretext for holding people in Camp Delta. That pretext is that these people are enemy combatants and are therefore mortal threats to the American homeland. Hence, it's necessary to imprison them. Detainees at Camp Delta can expect to be tortured in really dehumanizing ways. In 2005, an expose of the camp revealed that detainees were subjected to sexual interrogation techniques and physically assaulted by snatch squads. It was said that the Geneva Conventions concerning torture was intentionally ignored and that some prisoners were beaten to the point of brain damage. In 2007, WikiLeaks published a lead document that outlined the standard operating procedures for the camp. The document had over 200 pages and included rules for dealing with hunger strikes. Some of these rules also included instructions for psychologically manipulating detainees and using military dogs to intimidate them. The Karanjiro Penitentiary. The Karanjiro Penitentiary is certainly the most dangerous prison on earth. In 1992, the prison had an explosive prison riot that ended with 102 certified dead bodies. The remarkable thing about this massacre is that it was almost wholly inflicted on the inmates by the guards and was a result of a prison riot that got way out of control. According to the prison warden, there was no way he could have controlled the circumstances that led to the massacre. At the time, the prison had 7,500 inmates and just 1,500 guards, divided into 4 shifts. That meant that less than 400 guards were available to keep the prison secure at any given time. That's why the riots were able to get so out of control that the military police had to be called in to take control of the situation. Aside from the danger and violence that was associated with the Caranjiro prison, it was also a stomping ground for all manner of STDs. It was estimated that about 1 in every 5 inmates in the health wing was diagnosed with HIV. That's why the prisoners usually used their infected blood to fight against guards whenever the prison had a riot. It is very difficult for the most imaginative person to think of a more chaotic and destructive prison environment than that. Thankfully, the prison was demolished way back in 2002. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash the subscribe button and like it. Turn on post notifications as well, because there's a lot more from where this came from.